Hi, welcome everyone to a special edition of Story Trading. This is usually our happy hour where our VIP members get to casually talk among each other with their peers about the stocks that we're invested in at Story Trading. Today we have a special presentation. We have the CEO of Kubient here, Paul Roberts, along with the CFO Josh Weiss. That was facilitated by Gateway IR. So we appreciate John Yee's help there from Gateway IR for setting this up. But first, a quick disclaimer: Story Trading is not an investment advisor. That goes for any of our guest speakers as well. Investing in securities involves significant risk of loss. And again, this presentation is being recorded, will be posted on social media. Before we get started with our special guests today, a quick little information about what story trading is and what a story trade is. So at story trading, what you can do is discover, collaborate, and validate market-moving information through crowdsourced research and social collaboration. That allows you to understand market pricing, also known as the story behind the trade, through the lens of the four pillars, which we've defined as story trading, as fundamentals, catalysts, sentiment, and technicals. And you can sign up for our upcoming app. We have our own app coming out in private beta next month. If you go to StoryTrading.com, you can sign up on for the waitlist for that app. And also, if you go to StoryTrading.com, you can go here and click on VIP Performance, and just a little bit of a explanation. When you go there and you click the VIP Performance, you can see we're dramatically outperforming the market. Actually, Google Spreadsheets is a little messed up with their calculation today, but once that comes back up, you'll see we're outperforming the markets by about 4 times. These are all user-generated ideas, presentations made on Zoom by our customers or collaborators. And in addition to that, we have new ideas presented to us, such as Kubient and some other ones with some investor relationships we have. So again, a clarification: at this time, Kubient is not a VIP pick. This stock is being introduced to our community, and if someone from a community chooses to champion this stock and present it as a VIP pick, then it will be tracked as such on this spreadsheet in the future if that happens. So Kubient, on my screen, last trade 485. Want to quickly go over technicals and fundamentals here. That's a little chart on the technicals for people who are not familiar with it. Fundamentals, we got this from Y-charts. You can see here the market cap, the cash, which has gone up dramatically. Probably, I guess you guys did some financing recently, so $32 million. Revenue, which has not gone up yet, at least historically they're reported. So little background there. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to CEO Paul Roberts. Thank you, Paul, for joining us.
Great. Obviously, thanks so much for having us, Ben. We're really excited to, connect with the community, let them know more about Kubient, and honestly, more about ad tech and programmatic as a whole. I know that it's a highly technical industry, but we try to simplify it, let people know why the technology we're building is so meaningful, and give them a little background on who we are and really where we think we could take the company. So with that being said, Ben, I was going to present a hopefully quick presentation and leave some time for questions. If you have any up front, happy to answer them. But if nothing up front, I could jump right into the presentation, hopefully, which will answer any questions.
Yeah, that sounds good. We'll go with that presentation first.
Great. Give me 1 second here. Let me just fire up PowerPoint. If you can, Ben, I can't see you anymore. If you could just give me a quick, see it?
I see it.
Awesome. So just a little background on myself. I've spent a little over 20 years in digital advertising. I've sat on both the buy side and the sell side. And what I've found is that digital advertising as a whole was incredibly ineffective. The markets were inefficient. And what they were doing is, taking $1 and really ending up with about 30 to 40 cents of media being spent for the advertisers. So Kubient, our whole thesis is transforming digital advertising. We want the buyers and sellers of digital advertising to be incredibly efficient and transparent. We want the buyers to get what they're paying for, and the sellers, which are the website owners, the app owners, to get the true value of their audience. So Ben, I know you said a bit here on the forward-looking statement, not to be redundant, but obviously there's some information in here that is significant. And we're obviously relying on everybody to take a look at this forward-looking statement that is in all of our documents. So jumping right into a digital advertising marketplace. So Kubient has built technology that creates a marketplace that we call the Audience Cloud. So what you see here is the marketplace description of the sell side, which is going to be the publishers or the website or app owners. And on the other side, you see the buyers, which are the advertisers, the brands, the agencies. What you're going to very quickly realize is this mimics the stock markets that we're all very familiar with. On one side, you have a buyer of a commodity. On the other side, you have the seller. So on the sell side, you have a website that opens up. We have this representation at the bottom. And what happens is there's something called real-time bidding. So this allows multiple advertisers to bid in real time on the advertising slot. They're going to use some audience targeting. And at the end, if everything goes according to plan, an advertisement gets placed on the site. So this all started about 15 years ago, where website owners were trying to generate more revenue for their ad units. And technology was built to allow not just one ad to go onto a page, but allow people to actually bid on it and place that ad there. In theory, it all worked very well. This industry, as most of you know, has grown incredibly fast. Every year you see year-over-year growth. In 2020 alone, it's expected that a little over $380 billion was transacted, and that's expected to grow to over $517 billion by 2023. You'll also notice here that traditional advertising, print, the traditional forms that most people are familiar with, have continued to decrease, while more and more of every brand dollar continues to move online into the digital space. So we talked about the marketplace. You have buyers and sellers of digital advertising. And one of the most unique aspects of this marketplace is that speed dictates everything. Speed is everything. So when a website loads, when an app loads, when you go to when you go to your Google Chrome browser and you type in ESPN.com, as soon as you hit enter, it starts a 300 millisecond window of time. This is incredibly important because everyone gets those same 300 milliseconds in order to get an advertisement onto that page. So whether you're Google, Facebook, the Trade Desk, or Kubient, everybody has to operate within those 300 milliseconds. So I won't bore you with everything that happens here, but what's happening is we're trying to identify who's on the site. We're packaging up all that information. We're taking some third-party data, and we're saying not only is this Ben, but Ben might be in the market for a new car, a credit card, etc. We're then packaging that all up, and then we're trying to get advertisers, brands, agencies to bid on that advertisement. We then have to return the ad unit with a price and create the entire full chain within the 300 milliseconds. With obviously the growth and the incredibly condensed amount of time we have to operate, we've started to see a huge uptick in some big industry problems. First and foremost is digital ad fraud. In 2019, over $42 billion was basically lost by brands and advertisers on digital ad fraud. This number is expected to reach $100 billion over the next few years by 2023. It's very, very rare to see on the cover of the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal somebody being caught or somebody being charged with digital ad fraud. And to think that every single brand in the world, from Visa to Ford, all the way down to your local laundromat or fast food store, are being affected by this. Digital advertising fragmentation is a huge issue as well. When the industry started out, you had multiple advertisers bidding and trying to buy one advertisement spot. What you have now is when a large brand wants to advertise, they're basically taking their dollar, they're giving it to their agency partner, who takes 10 cents and gives it to their agency trading desk, who takes another 8 cents, who then gives it to a DSP, who's going to take another 12 cents. Then all of a sudden it has to go to an SSP or a supply side platform. They're going to take another 15 cents. And by the time that dollar makes it all the way down to ESPN, they're actually only spending 30 to 45, maybe even 50 cents on the media. So what we're seeing is a lot of brands start to ask questions of how many hops are between my brand dollar and the audience I'm trying to reach. And publishers on the other side of that conversation are saying, why am I only getting pennies on the dollar for this incredibly valuable audience that I've built? So we solve a lot of these problems. Latency, What you're going to talk to about latency is when you go to a website and you want to watch a video or you want to watch some sort of video content, and all you see is a little black spinning wheel. So what you're seeing there is the advertising technology is failing. So you have a brand who tried to reach the person on that page, they're unable to do it. So you have the brand losing out, you have the publisher missing out on the revenue, and here you are trying to just watch the highlights from last night's game, and you can't even do that. So when you add all of this up, it adds to a tremendous amount of waste and inefficiency that we're trying to solve with our technology. So what do we do? We're focused on building unique and proprietary technology that solves these massive industry problems. We offer both brands and publishers one point of entry into this ecosystem. They don't need 55 vendors. They don't need an SSP, an ad exchange for video, for display, for all these different environments. We give them the ability to plug their audience in and monetize it at the highest rate possible. We give advertisers the ability to plug in by multiple different types of media. They could do video, display, native, in different environments, in CTV, desktop, etc. They're able to do this in an incredibly efficient way while removing a ton of the ad fraud that they had been buying from the start of their digital media campaigns. So this is creating an efficient marketplace. We're preventing the fraud before it starts. And this basically optimizes the entire supply chain. So what you're going to start to see is brands want to plug directly into the websites and buy the media. They don't want all of these hops. They don't want all of these middlemen who are creating the inefficiency, which leads to a tremendous amount of fraud. We're basically giving the advertisers more money back in their pocket, more effective media, and the ability for publishers to actually make the true value of their audience. So here's a snapshot of partners we've done this with and how we've done it before. So we engaged with the Associated Press. They basically came to us and said, we don't feel that we're getting the true value of our audience. So once we were able to get under the hood a little bit and look at their technology and how they were set up and use some of our tools, we were able to show them that here's a brand looking to spend $40 on their advertisement. All of these middle layers are in between. You had an agency trading desk, supply side platform, ad exchange, another ad exchange. All these people were taking a bite of their dollar. We were able to show them if you can remove all of these layers of inefficiency, we can capture up to 50% more revenue for you. So what we're trying to do, Ben, is show a very, very data-driven approach of partnerships. Here's how much more money you could make. Here's the advertiser outcome, where a lot of the inefficiency is basically due to a black box model. We're shining a very, very bright light in a dark hole where we're showing them, here's how you're losing all the money, here's where all the money's getting sucked in, and here's how we can help. So we have multiple ways that we do this. The first thing that we built was auction technology. It's real-time bidding technology for a supply-side platform. That technology allowed us to do things faster. Again, going back to the 300 milliseconds, there's a finite amount of time we had to do all of this. When we realized that we could do video programmatic advertising in under 100 milliseconds, we went back to all the brands we knew and said, what other challenges are you really faced with? And we continuously heard over and over again, we can't continue to buy as much fraud as we are. We're using all these different vendors. They all claim to have the best machine learning, the best AI, but they're all doing it after I spend my dollar and then giving me a static block list to basically go out and try to help prevent buying bot traffic again. So we knew how important it was to take that machine learning that everybody was using post impression or post media buy and use it within that 300 milliseconds. So that's our core product called Kai, which stands for Kubient AI, and that helps both the brands and the publishers transact in a fraud-free environment. We've started to build out and test a media trading desk or a DSP. This allows advertisers to come directly to Kubient, bring their first-party data, and be able to buy directly on publishers, apps, connected TV, etc. This saves them a tremendous amount of money and also helps them reach a much more targeted audience because they don't have all of these layers of inefficiency in between. Other pieces of the stack include proprietary technology for digital out of home. We also, really focus on this direct marketplace. where we're trying to remove all the inefficiency, all the layers in between the buyers and the sellers. And having these partnerships with companies, it throws off a tremendous amount of data. So if you heard it once, you heard it a million times, data is the new gold. We have the ability to basically capture a tremendous amount of information from both the buy and the sell side, which helps Kai and our decisioning engine continue to get smarter and smarter. So we've talked a lot about ad fraud. You heard me talk about Kai. We want to dive a little bit more into what is Kai and why is it so different. So again, going back to what's commercially available today, there are companies out there that help brands try to identify ad fraud. These are typically post-impression, so post-ad being served, they're going to analyze it with machine learning. They're going to tell a brand, here's how much fraud you bought today. They then build up a block list in real time of all the known bots. Here's the bots that basically stole all your money. Every time you go buy media, check this list again and see if that bot's on there. So now if you think about that for a second, the criminals know this. They know how the game works. They've taken billions and billions of dollars from brands and publishers. They basically create the bots to sniff the pages and look for tech or code that's on the page with these block lists. They also create the bots where they could actually create entirely new personas in near real time. So they'd be basically able to send out bots, steal money, completely change the look and feel in the bot, go out and steal more money, rinse, repeat, do it over and over again. So we've built what we believe is the industry's first true pre-bid machine learning fraud detection and prevention. So with Kubient and Kai, what we're able to do is when a website loads, we capture all of the information that's passed to us. That data takes two different paths at that moment. One, it goes down the traditional OpenRTB path that everybody knows that SSPs and DSPs do today. But while that's happening, it also goes into Kai. And our machine learning algorithm, it's a deep neural network that basically looks at all of the data available and says, is this really Ben? Or is this a bot pretending to be Ben? And if it's not Ben, do not sell that advertisement to Visa. Do not sell that advertisement to Ford. Because obviously we know robots, they're not out buying, lumber yet. They're not buying cars yet. These brands, they want to reach real people. And the fact that they're spending so much money on non-human traffic has put a black eye on this entire industry. So we believe that this technology directly will impact the billions and billions of dollars being lost to digital ad fraud. It's native to our platform. It's completely built into our platform. So every brand, every advertiser, every publisher that plugs their platforms into Kubient gets the protection of Kai. This offers, near zero latency because it's native to our platform. One of the biggest challenges and why other companies haven't moved their machine learning into that 300 millisecond window is they don't have the time to do it. So if another company tried to do this, they would have to go all the way back in our life cycle and build faster real-time bidding technology that can transact faster and use that that machine learning technology in that native environment in a very, very quick window of time. So we've filed patents around this technology. That's exciting for us to get the recognition for the team and obviously protect this IP. But we think Kai is really a huge game changer for the industry. Another big piece, Ben, that we'll talk about is the data. A lot of companies in the fraud identity space, they're not sharing where the fraud is coming from, who's doing it, how they're doing it. We're basically showing all the data. Again, transparency. Transparency is key to what we're doing. So we're able to give our partners a dashboard that shows them in real time how much fraud they're buying, where it's coming from, the type of fraud. It helps them from a business intelligence standpoint to help pick and choose their partners. So a little bit more about Kai. It is a self-learning neural network. So the more data that comes in, the smarter and smarter it gets. There's only so many people in the world on the internet. Eventually, we will see all of them. And we'll have an understanding of their past behavior on the web. And we'll be able to identify, again, is this Ben or is this a bot mimicking Ben's behavior? So the key for us is to quickly change the industry discussion, both on the buy and the sell side, from, hey, we've identified all this fraud, to let's just prevent it in the first place. So the data getting kicked off, we've seen about 600 million internet devices. That continues to climb every day. And, obviously there's a tremendous amount of laws and, e-privacy, GDPR, et cetera, that we're always, aware of. So we know we can't use any personally identifiable information, but there's a tremendous amount of information that gets passed in the open RTB or real-time bidding environment that can help us identify who's real and who isn't. So a snapshot here is, some of the partnerships we have. We're very proud of the people we surround ourselves with. You'll also see a very diverse mix of partnerships here, from data aggregators, digital out-of-home partners, to traditional SSPs, DSPs, direct publishers. And, they luckily share our vision of a, super transparent, fraud-free environment where the buyers and sellers of advertising have a much better relationship. Our business model really hinges on a few key pieces. We have the advertising marketplace where we connect the buyers and the sellers. The differentiators for us are the digital out-of-home piece, the KAI fraud prevention. We have the audience desk that's in beta. We think that the brands are going to start looking for, how do we get closer to the source of audience? How do we get closer to that web publisher, that CTV partner, and buy that directly, rather than going through the 6 or 7 hops we do today? The revenue streams are broken down as a percentage of media spend. We also have partnerships with publishers where we take a percentage of the publisher revenue. We have the opportunity, and we've packaged up data and sold the data. And we're currently talking to a few partners about using KAI as a SaaS model, as a standalone within their own technology. The growth strategy has been clear from day one for us. We continuously have to accelerate sales. People hear about KAI, they want to learn about it. We have to continue to build out the team to go out and share the gospel of fraud prevention. We'll continue, obviously, to listen to our partners, listen to our clients, and diversify our products as needed. We think there's a huge opportunity to grow internationally. There's been just an explosive growth of mobile usage in certain regions in the world. Mobile traffic traditionally lends itself to fraud, so KAI will be critical there. I think, the out-of-home and digital out-of-home market for a long time has kind of floated along. We've definitely ruffled some feathers in building technology there that changes how people are buying and selling digital out-of-home. We're a tech company through and through, so we're always going to continue to build technology. Computing power is changing every 18 months or so. So we're always on the lookout for, how can we always improve? How can we always improve KAI? How can we always improve how the buyers and sellers are interacting? And, last and a big topic for us recently is on the M&A side. So we did engage with an investment bank called Lake Street Capital Markets to help us kind of sift through a lot of the available technologies, partners, companies that are out there, and look for the right ones that are going to be super accretive to what we're building. And, happy to dive more into the M&A strategy with you, Ben. But, for us, we've built this core technology that we know operates more efficiently, transparently, removes fraud. If you think in your head, who benefits from that? So we have publishers on one side of the world, the supply side, which is, SSPs, ad exchanges, huge ad networks, connected TV partners. On the other side of the world, you have the agencies, the brands, the trading desks. There's a ton of companies right now that are looking for, how do I service my clients better? How do I get my advertising clients a much better return on their media dollar? So they would be a great fit for Kubient, as well as the supply side. So, we're excited about what we've seen out in the market. We continue to have great conversations, and, hopefully we'll have some news in the near future. Just a corporate snapshot. I know this information is all readily available. Just to recap for everybody, the market cap might be a little off today, but we have about 14 million shares outstanding. We have a large inside ownership. We take a lot of pride in owning the company, growing the company. We want to stand shoulder to shoulder with our shareholders. We consider them our partners. What we're trying to build is long-term shareholder value, because we own so much of this company. We're completely invested in the success here. You mentioned earlier, we have about $32 million in cash. Revenue has been ticking up over the last few quarters. And a metric we like to look at a lot is ad impression opportunities. So how many opportunities do we have to make revenue? And we express that with our ad impression opportunities. Some of the highlights of the company, we've obviously put ourselves in a place where we think we're one of the leading, ad tech marketplaces. Talked a little bit about the M&A activity. That's going to be very, very exciting for us. We think Kai and the proprietary technology we've built there is just a huge game changer. To be able to prevent ad fraud and show the data and show here's what we did. There's not many people, if any, out there doing that. Our team comes with a very, very deep background in both ad tech, advertising. We've always said we have to surround ourselves with the greatest people we could find. And, we've recently added a couple new hires that show, we're basically sticking to that idea. The market cap is massive, as everybody knows, the market, the addressable market that we're trying to capture. We think that digital advertising has about another 12, 15 more years of growth before it somewhat plateaus, but we're excited for that ride. And again, the data that we're capturing really helps feed all of our decisioning for Kai, for the media buying, et cetera. So the more we get, the better off we are. Talking about the leadership, I gave a little bit of my background. Our CFO, who's on the call, spent a handful of years at Markham in their SEC public market practice. Pavel Medvedev, who's our CTO, spent time at both DoubleVerify, Live Intent, IPON Web. He's got about a dozen years of high level, super successful technology work under his belt. And Leon Zamel, who recently joined us as our Chief Product Officer, he was very early on at MediaMath, Rocket Fuel, most recently was at DoubleVerify as well. And our board of directors, have been incredibly helpful to us. People like Jeannie Moon, who came out of MediaMath as a COO, as a CFO. John Bond was a longtime board member for White Ops, which is now Human. Just giving us the background, how these companies scaled, the pieces that they had in place, so they ensured success, they ensured great investor returns. And Larry Harris just joined us as well. He was the CMO at Pubmatic. He's been involved in the digital advertising space for over 20 years, like myself. So we try to surround ourselves with people who have been there, who have grown massive companies in the past. And here's where I stop and say thank you very much. And our contact information, if there's any additional questions that Ben or I don't get to today, please always reach out directly at Kubient@gatewayir.com. Matt, Tom, and John there have been super helpful. Hopefully everybody's satisfied with the questions we get answered today.
Great, thank you, Paul, for that presentation. Before we get into the Q&A, I just want to remind people for our upcoming events, you can go to StoryTrading.com, hit that menu item in the top right. You can click on VIP events to see what's coming up. We have most of these events are VIP only. You got to be a paid member of StoryTrading, and occasionally we make some of them, like today, a free preview. And also please follow us on YouTube and Twitter, help get the word out. That's helpful for everybody. So with that, Paul, I'm going to start with some questions of my own. I see already a lot of questions in chat, so we'll get to those. If anyone wants to come on audio, you guys go first. So raise your hand. We like the interactivity of direct questions. So go ahead and raise your hand and we'll get to you first. So first, my questions, Paul, regarding competition. You say you have a patent, right? But
we filed for a patent, Ben. I just want to correct, just to make sure that we did file for the patent. The U.S. Patent Office usually takes anywhere from 12 to 36 months to return a response. So we're a little bit over the 1 year mark. So we're optimistic we'll hear something back soon.
Okay, great. So forgive my possibly novice questions on this. This is my first introduction to your company. But what's to stop Google from building this on their own?
Well, we get that question pretty often. What's to stop multiple companies from building something that can prevent ad fraud? And the reality is not everybody's invested in preventing ad fraud. When you look at companies like Google and other large companies, they always talk to me about, we're a marketplace very similar to you. We're not the police. We basically facilitate the buying and selling of media. So that's why then they point to 3 or 4 other companies that are outside of their walls to be the arbiter of this is fraud or this is not fraud. So I see people asking questions about how do we differentiate from those companies. So there are 4 or 5 other companies that have thrown their hat into the fraud identification space. Most DSPs and SSPs will tell you if you want to buy media or sell media through us, here are preferred vendors we have that can help you identify the ad fraud, but they're not going to basically get involved with it themselves.
Okay, great. Next question is that cash that you built up, 32 some odd million, is that for operations or is that for an acquisition? And you mentioned M&A, but I'm just curious, when your revenue still hasn't really reflected strong sustained growth, at least reported revenue. So are you relying on M&A to move your business forward? Is that kind of a necessary piece to get that revenue growth?
It's a great question, Ben, and we are not relying solely on M&A to grow the business. We think it'll be helpful, but we've continued to hire organic, salespeople within the organization to drive revenue. We think that M&A activity can really pour, gas on the fire, because again, what do we need on both sides of the market? We need supply, which is the traffic. We need advertisers or brand dollars. So we can continue to build that up and grow, which we're doing organically, or we could do it a lot faster because we have $30+ million in the bank and go out and make a strategic acquisition that adds a lot of volume on one side or both sides of the market.
Mm-hmm. And with that 32 million, what's your excluding any acquisition? What's your runway?
You and I will be old with gray hair. We're burning about $500,000, give or take, per month.
Okay. Okay, great. So
it gives us about 5-6 years.
5 years. Okay, so that money really was for targeting some sort of acquisition, it looks like.
Correct.
Got it. And then last, maybe 2 questions for me. There's a ton of questions, but I want to get mine out of the way. What are some upcoming catalysts we can look forward to in the next, let's say, 3 to 12 months?
Sure. So obviously partnerships continue to drive the excitement. It's what we're working on now is current partners to start publicly announcing the impact that Kai has had and the impact that Kubient has had on their media buying or their media selling. That would be a big piece for us, as well as key hires. And then obviously the M&A piece is going to be pretty big if we get something done, in the near term.
Okay. And is there a single kind of inflection point way off in the future, whenever that might be, that you can identify to us to say, hey, if this event happens, or if we get to this certain level of revenue, that'll be an inflection point to sustained profitable growth for this company. I want to be able to, as these press releases come out, how do we as shareholders identify that and say, aha, this, inflect this company at that point? Like anything specific you can point to that you maybe have a hope of achieving in the next few years?
It's interesting you asked that, because there's a lot of companies in this industry that I remember when they started. I remember MediaMath, I remember AppNexus, I remember White Ops when they, 5 guys, 6 guys in a room. And I remember vividly when it got to a point where they were known entities. What I mean by that is if you needed a DSP, where did you go? You went to the Trade Desk, you went to MediaMath, you went to Google. If you needed this, you went to White Ops. So I know it's a little bit of a round answer to your pointed question, but I think there's also things that we're going to look at, things like MRC accreditation, things like large brands or agencies saying publicly, we're using Kai, we're using Kubient to prevent fraud because we've seen the data and they do it better. Mm-hmm. And I remember when, years and years ago, when White Ops identified this one fraud and everybody was talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. And it was kind of like, okay, they've arrived. So for us within programmatic and ad tech, when we can get a large brand, an agency, a holding company to stand up and raise their hand and say, we've gone with Kubient because of this, that we can sing from the mountaintops of how great our technology is, and we can show people the tech and the data. But until a third party really goes on record, because again, it's a small industry, very highly politicized, everybody knows everybody. So for a company to say, okay, we're not going with this 600-person incumbent, but we're going to go with this company because they have better technology, to me, that would be a game changer.
Yeah, that's a very helpful color. And do you think that's something that could happen soonish, or do you really have to have a lot more traction? Is it like in a year's time frame, or is that possible? Could happen this year, something like that?
I don't want to, give exact timing, but, what I can say is there are partners who use Kai that we would be incredibly fortunate if they were to come out publicly and say, this is why we're using it.
Cool. Great.
Because again, when you start talking about the PR machine, everybody wants to see the PR, but a lot of these companies, number one, don't want to go on record that they had such a big fraud issue. They had to go find a new solution. So it's an interesting problem we solve. But, I'm confident that the partners we have today, one of them could be one of those catalysts, but, we continue to add partners and tell the story and show the data.
Great. Thanks. That's very helpful. We got a bunch of questions here. Let's see if we can quickly go through them in the 20 minutes we have left here. David Nathan says, as an online media buyer, I'm very aware of ad fraud and understandably hate it. Kubient says it has the answer to ad fraud. If that's indeed the case, the product should be a no-brainer and growth should be massive. What are some of the top impediments to getting scale?
It's, David, coming from the industry, you know better than most that you have a process in place. And as a media buyer, you have approved vendors that you work with. So for us, it's finding a way into all of these brands and platforms to say, give us a test and let us give you all of the data. Because at the end of the day, the data does not lie. So what we've actually done is, you saw the dashboard earlier in the presentation. We've started to create individual dashboards and be able to show them directly to brands and say, anytime you want to wake up at 2 a.m. and check this dashboard, you're going to see how much fraud you're buying through your current partners, because we see it in the marketplace. So we basically are looking at unique ways, David, to get a foothold or get an in with any of these media companies, because everybody's being impacted by fraud. You said it yourself. You're incredibly aware of how frustrating and rampant it is. The issue is, how do you basically get a Procter & Gamble, a Visa, a Ford to shift their strategy to test Kubient? So that's really what our team is focused on, of how do we get those early adopters, those challenger brands who understand what a big problem fraud is, and how do they basically understand quickly. And we've tried to make it incredibly clear by showing all the data. Here's a dashboard. Here's all the information you're going to need for them to make a decision to at least test with us. And I will definitely be looking David up on LinkedIn and see if we can get a test going with him.
Great. Sounds good. I got Joshua Kennedy here. Can you touch on the partnerships with Tron, PubMatic, and Google, and explain what exactly these partnerships are and how they're developing?
Sure. So Tron is a unique partner where they had some issues trying to help prevent fraud, and their current vendor was unable to do it. So after learning about Kai, we integrated Kai directly into their platform, and we were able to remove the fraud before they were out selling it into the market. So our partnership with Tron is really twofold. One is with Kai, we're able to help them prevent the fraud. And then we're also able to bid or serve ads and buy ads directly on their inventory. And the PubMatic and Google relationships are somewhat similar, where we're able to actually connect into PubMatic and buy inventory on their properties. Google as well, outside of YouTube, which is a closed wall, we're able to bid throughout the Google ecosystem, and allows us some pretty large scale, because what happens is you have, excuse me, you have a marketplace, but you have a chicken and egg environment where we have a great conversation with this large CPG brand. Then they said, well, we need all of this scale and you need to go get this scale. So we turn around and forge partnerships with companies like PubMatic, Google, et cetera. We go back to them and say, now we have Google. Okay, now we can have a conversation. When do we integrate? How do we integrate? And it's really helpful to us, because again, seeing all of that traffic and all of that supply come into our platform, it only makes Kai smarter and smarter. So it's strategic for us to have these big partnerships on both the buy and the sell side. And we've been very happy with them so far.
Okay, great. We got a question from looks like an anonymous attendee who says, why has the AP, why did the AP not convert it to a full-fledged customer after the trial has ended if they like the solution so much?
Not sure if there's some confusion there, but we actually did just re-sign. We had a 1-year contract with the Associated Press, and they were happy with everything we'd done for them. So they actually re-signed for another 1 year with a 1-year possible extension. So they're still a partner of ours.
Okay, great. Brett has a great question. Where do you believe your company will be in 1, 2, 5, and 10 years from now?
I think we're going to have some real tier 1 direct brands and partners buying media directly on our platform. And we're going to continue to onboard, the top 50,000 websites, connected TV partners so that they could buy them directly. And we're basically going to start to stand for, the company that believes in the transparency and preventing fraud. Our thinking is if we can get a brand to test Kai through our pipes and they say, okay, we're going to buy, $200,000, $300,000 of media through Kubient. If we're able to show them all the data and all the fraud we prevented, it's not a very hard conversation to go back to them and say, wouldn't you like your other $600 million per, not buying fraud? Because the challenge is that fraud impacts everybody, whether you're the largest brands in the world or the smallest. So we literally need to have the right sales team, the right business development to go out and get people to test the platform, because when they test it and they see how much fraud we can prevent, it's very hard for a media buyer, a brand manager, a chief marketing officer to say, you know what, we don't want to use those guys who help us prevent fraud anymore.
Great, Paul. A few more questions. I'm going to sneak another one of my own in that I forgot to ask you. I want to know from your conversations with potential investors, maybe institutional investors, what do you think may be holding back, if you believe your share price is not fairly valued? Maybe you believe it is. I'd like your opinion on that. But if you believe it's not fairly valued on the market, what do you think, or what are you hearing from some institutions that their concerns are, or what they're kind of waiting for before they invest in the company?
Sure. So number one, obviously we do look at the market price. We look at, the stock throughout the day. We try not to obsess over the ups and downs on a daily basis. Again, we're trying to deliver long-term value for our shareholders. I do believe, we're in the right place today. I think what a lot of analysts, investment bankers that we talk to are looking for is, how do we deploy all this capital we have? We're sitting on a tremendous amount of cash for a company our size. How do you deploy it? Where do you use it? And what is the impact of how you use it? So not only is it going to be critical that we find the right target for potential M&A activity, but how does it integrate? How quickly does it integrate? And ensuring that 2 + 2 = 10, not 5, not 6, but how do we hit a home run with an acquisition that, number one, greatly accelerates the adoption of Kai? If the thinking is, if we could look at either a supply side partner, a demand side partner, and they're using Kai, there's a built-in massive case study that we can get every industry analyst around. If we can pick up a large audience side piece where it's okay, if they have 10,000 websites, 50, 100, 200,000 websites, and they're all being protected by Kai, and we can show that data. We talked about earlier that catalyst. I think that's a piece of it.
Okay, man, these questions do not stop coming in. You guys are popular. Harris Siddiqui says, how is Kai different from integrated AS's solution?
Sure. So integrated ad science, double verify, white ops, there's a lot of players in the fraud identity space. Again, we basically started in a very, very different place in those companies. We built faster auction marketplace technology. So 300 milliseconds to buy and sell a digital ad. We got it down much, much quicker. That allowed us to then figure out how to use a specific application to use machine learning within that window of time. A lot of these companies are trying to use machine learning as a bolt-on to that process. It doesn't work. For those of you who are familiar with machine learning and AI, there's a very, very small window of time to be able to come out with a very, very, accurate prediction. If you ask Alexa, what time is it? 1 second, 2 seconds. And there's Alexa in the background, 5:15 p.m. But it takes a few seconds. We had to literally rebuild the way that machine learning is done in a very specific way to allow it to operate in this window of time at a high level of confidence. So if these other companies want to do this, best of luck. You need to go back and build a real-time bidder. You need to build a supply-side platform that ingests all of this data and has it within those 300 milliseconds, identify it, and then prevent it from being sold into the market.
Paul, you've talked about that a lot. Can I ask, how much capital and time was put into that?
So we raised a little over $4.5 million privately before going public. We basically pushed every chip we had in the middle on this concept. And, once our head of data science, a woman, Vasanthi Mahajan, came to me and said, Paul, we got it. We need partners to test this. It was like, it was the best day in our company because it took her about 18 months how to figure out how to ingest hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of queries per second, take that and identify the good and the bad out of that. So it took us a long road to get here. It always seems easy when it's done, but I think the big piece for us was when we were able to run Kai against other platforms and show all the fraud that we would have prevented when they actually just identified it after the fact.
All right, a few more. Do you have some time to get a few more questions here?
I do. I'd love to hopefully answer them all if I can.
All right, good. So we have Bart Watson asking, is Kubient a likely target for a larger company to acquire? And how do you think about that? Are you open to that possibility of being acquired?
To be honest, Bart, never say never. We haven't really gone down that path to explore that. We've typically looked at being the acquirer, but I think Kai and Kubient as a whole would be a great acquisition for a large holding company, a large CPG brand that wants to basically take programmatic in-house. It would be a plug and play, amazing piece of technology for, a large brand with huge sets of data that want to buy that transparent, clean traffic.
Okay, we got a question from Steve. Pretty informed question here. Does your fraud prevention solution address app install fraud, promo abuse, meaning click farms and bots are downloading apps to collect a higher fee to download the apps and register? So are you stopping the fraud at the ad level before they click through to the app install? Thus, Steve, the brand is paying a ton of money to the ad networks to bogus publishers.
I love the industry specific questions because now I could really... So we basically prevent the media from being bought at the simplest level when the ads run. So app install fraud is a massive problem. And the way that they've tried to solve that is when an app is installed, they don't pay until somebody actually does something within the app. But what we're saying is don't even buy the media to target the bot at the start. Don't, because what's happening is they're running ads to bots. Bots are downloading the app and they're getting paid. So if you don't ever even serve your ad to the bot in the first place, you don't have to worry about the app install. So to answer your question directly, no, we do not work with app install fraud, but what we're trying to do is prevent the advertiser from ever even serving the ad to the bot who could potentially download the app.
Okay, great. There are a number of questions. I'm just going to consolidate them. And I think you answered this, but the status of the patent you mentioned that's pending, right? So there's nothing more to add there. You just got to wait, right? What's the kind of timeline on that?
When you're dealing with the government, we love them, but they basically come back with a very blanket answer of 12 to 36 months.
Okay.
What we're doing is trying to look in the market at similar technologies or other things that revolve around machine learning of how long it's taking, but I would be wrong to even guess at that.
Okay. And there are a number of questions on the status of looking for an acquisition. It's been a number of months since you raised that money. And what's the environment look like in general for acquisitions? And are you having any progress or potential leads?
So I can say we have had a lot of progress. We started with a very wide pool of candidates and narrowed that down quickly. We've had some tremendous conversations. It's exciting for me as a founder to talk to other founders and CEOs and explain our vision. The key, Ben, is to find somebody with a very, very shared vision to what Kubient has built. Because again, we want to quickly be able to plug something in and both benefit from the upside of the synergy. So we have engaged, in my opinion, with a very, very talented banking team that's gotten us very far, very quick. So we're, optimistic that, the target is out there. I don't want to get myself in trouble and say too much, but it's been a great process and, we're excited of where it's headed.
Cool. Thanks for that color. Got a question, anonymous question that was privately sent to me here. On the last ER call, you mentioned focusing on demand side growth. Have you seen acceleration in this area? And would you say you're on pace or ahead of expectations?
So obviously, I think somebody mentioned it here. We're not giving guidance. We do have one analyst that covers us, so we would, refer to his coverage of what his opinion is. But again, one of the challenges that we're facing in this market is we just basically came out of a year that nobody ever expected or could predict. So the employment environment is very different. So we've basically, I don't want to say struggled, but we had basically roadmaps of, okay, this month we're going to hire this many people, this month we're going to hire that many people, and it's basically been delayed by about 50 to 75% in time, because people aren't necessarily moving jobs. There's a lot of uncertainty of back to work. What are people doing? So if the one thing I can comment about the demand side, we're hoping to add 5 to 10 new demand salespeople rather quickly. And the amount of resumes I thought we would get wasn't nearly as high. And some of the hires that we've already made, it took a little bit longer than expected.
Okay, great. We are catching up here. I think 2 more questions. Colin O'Donnell says, it sounds like much of the tech has already been built, and you mentioned you'll always be building new technology. Can you preview any current projects being built in-house? And also, can you provide any guidance on gross margins? That's maybe a question for Josh Weiss.
Sure. So obviously I'm going to stay away from the gross margin question right now, but regarding the technology, that when you think about how to get an ad onto a website, it's somewhat complex technology. But now what we need to build is all the bells and whistles that either the publishers or the advertisers are asking for. So if an advertiser comes to us and says, hey, we want to retarget people who come to a certain website, but only in the CTV and digital out of home environment, that's not an out of the box type scenario. So we have an incredibly agile technology team that can basically pivot, build that, and understand that here's the expected revenue out of building that technology. So again, one of the biggest pieces we put into the deck is always continuing and evolving our technology. We listen to our advertising partners, we listen to our publishing partners. Not only what do they need today, but where's the market in 5 years from now? Google basically threw down a gauntlet of, we're getting rid of cookies. And then at the last minute, they blinked and they didn't do it. But we think that's going to come eventually. So how do brands, how do publishers continue to transact when there's no cookies involved in the middle? How do you buy and sell media when you can't even identify who's on the other side of the screen? So we've been constantly thinking about this. How do we either build something to solve this challenge? How do we acquire a company that's already solving this challenge? So, we think that the next piece of technology that we're going to put out into the market that we hope for adoption is around the demand side platform, or the DSP. We've had multiple brands suggest to us, we don't want to buy through our agency trading desk, through this DSP to you, because we're going to lose 25 to 30% of that dollar before it even hits Kubient's technology. Can you build us a front end? Can you build us a UI where our media buyers can actually log in? They've set budgets, they flight campaigns, they run their media, and they could do it all within your ecosystem. It puts a ton of money back into their pocket, and it helps them be incredibly more efficient. So, we're excited about the people who are testing the DSP. What we're doing is listening. What's the functionality you have in other DSPs that you're going to need, and rapidly building that.
Okay, was there gross margins? I don't know if Josh wanted to add anything on that.
Typically when anybody asks about specific margins, we have obviously multiple filings with the SEC with our revenue. It's okay. Somewhat of an easy math. You just take but the margins obviously will continue to increase as we get more direct to the buyers and the sellers. That's the biggest challenge in our industry, is that there's a lot of people in the middle who take a little bite of the apple, and then they pass that apple on to the next platform. So what we're trying to be is the platform where basically the buying and the selling can happen all in one place.
Yeah, and I'll just add that since our technology is substantially complete, we're able to maintain margins north of 90%.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you for that, Josh. I'm going to turn it over real quick to my co-host and colleague, Rob Mock. He has a question for you. Go ahead, Rob.
Hi, Paul. How's it going?
Hey, Rob.
So I have a few questions. So are we seeing bots and marketing fraud increasing as time goes on? Are there more bots and more fraud? Or is there a certain percentage of fraud that you normally see on average accounts?
Sure. So we basically have numbers in our deck that, in 2019, the IAB estimated about $42 billion was was stolen by the criminals, and that number is expected to climb to $100 billion by 2023. So if you put yourselves in the criminal shoes, and I'm not saying you specifically, Rob, but if you think about it, if digital ad fraud gets to $100 billion, it's one of the largest global crimes in the world. You could basically set up 30 super smart engineers in a room in a country without any extradition, and all day long they're just stealing money from the biggest brands in the world. If you search, there's very, very, if any, arrests made. Very, very rare for charges to be filed. Nobody's getting a slap on the wrist. Nothing's happening when people are stealing tens of billions and up to hundreds of billions of dollars from these brands. And my opinion is the reason nobody's arrested is because nobody can prevent it and truly identify it. So we're able, with a very high level of confidence, to show the brands and the publishers, here's who's committing the fraud. Here's how they're doing it. Here's their breadcrumb. Here's where the money's going. So I think that the criminal elements of the world are looking at digital ad fraud as a bonanza. Why wouldn't they just continue to increase how many bots they're putting into the ecosystem, how much money they could steal? Because nobody's coming for them.
Yeah, it sounds like you have an extremely valuable product. I would think the only thing that could hinder the adoption is companies like coming out and admitting that so much money has been lost to like ad fraud, but eventually over time you should have increased adoption.
Correct.
How do you get around that? The fact that companies have to like admit that there was a lot of fraud before to kind of use your product.
Well, we always go back to the story of AppNexus. Those in the industry, people know AppNexus very well. Recently acquired for a couple $100 million. One day, about 6 years ago, they literally woke up and just said, "Hey, they sent out an email to all their partners. We're removing 50% of the available traffic in our network." At this point, they were one of the largest SSPs in the world. They literally said 50% of our traffic is fraud. Everybody going to get coffee? What's going on today? It was as if it was a non-event. So I personally believe, like you do, Rob, that people don't like to admit they have a problem unless they have a solution. So we're able to give brands this huge tool to say, yes, you've been buying tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of digital ad fraud forever. We're able to give you technology that helps prevent it.
Yeah, now I'm seeing if you get one big customer and it becomes a case study, you'll have other customers just jumping in to get the same results. Thank you.
And that's, and the way that we look at it is everybody is impacted by this. It's not just Visa, Home Depot, Procter & Gamble. It's every store that anybody who advertises online in a digital environment. So it's a real good problem to solve. We're putting a lot more money back in the hands of advertisers, of people who are creating audience, these web creators. These people are getting pennies on the dollar for their audience because there's so much fraud out there.
All right, great, Paul. I think the questions keep coming in, but we're going to call it a day. How can people follow up if they have further questions? I want to let you know, Paul, we have our own community at StoryTrading, and we're going to be opening up a Kubient research group for our VIP members. So people can get involved there, and we can perhaps coordinate some follow-ups. But in case you're open to direct questions, where can people go for that?
Sure. So like I mentioned at the end of the presentation, you could always reach out to Gateway, who's our investor relations firm. It's Kubient at gatewayir.com. Again, Kubient at gatewayir.com. And and they're always very quick to respond and get us on the phone with the right if people need direct answers. And I'll extend that to you, Ben, if your community has any follow-up questions. Happy to do this again in the future. And obviously update everybody on our progress.
Great. Thank you so much, Paul, for coming. And just want to, again, remind people, this is not a VIP pick yet. If one of you guys have a lot of conviction, you want to present this to the StoryTrading VIP community, there's a ton of people with a lot of money who invest in microcaps. So it's a great way to get the word out. Just join our community or email me at ben@storytrading.com. we do offer free subscriptions to people who present VIP presentations. So thank you again, Paul, for your time. Good luck, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Yep. Bye-bye. Make sure to follow us on StoryTrading, YouTube, StoryTrading, Twitter. Really helps us out, increase our reach. So appreciate it if you do that. And thank you very much, everyone. We will see you next week.